Oh, there's time left. Okay, thank you. Yeah, good.
Taoiseach, look, I don't think everyone understands the nature of politics. Motions of no confidence are put down, the government will come in, they'll praise you, they'll vote in favour of it, the opposition will outline all of your flaws and your failings, and we'll vote against it. And to be honest, that is sometimes the theatre that goes on in here. But below the theatre, there are genuine reasons why members of the opposition have no confidence, not only in the Taoiseach but also in this government. And we see them, as I'm sure members of the government see them and those reasons every day in their work, in their constituency work. You can argue all you want, Taoiseach, that there is a recovery underway, but the reality is that that recovery is a two-tier recovery. And I'm sure if you go into your own constituency, and your own constituency, Minister, you will see that two-tier recovery. You will see those who are benefiting and those who are worse off than they were 5 years ago. Now, I find it hard to stomach when I hear some of the Fianna Fáil rhetoric, even from the previous speaker, about public appointments, when in the dying days of that government in December 2010, there was 90 appointments made to state boards, including the pension board, might I add. And then we hear that they bring forward a bill to implement statutory recommendations rather than the guidelines which was brought in by Minister Howland. But yet they did nothing when they were in government. So I take everything Fianna Fáil says on these issues with a pinch of salt. The reality is that the Taoiseach, as the deputy head of government, as the leader of the Labour Party, has to bear responsibility for what is happening out in society. There is huge suffering, Minister. We have touched on homelessness. We have touched on issues that have affected terminally ill children, medical cards, cuts to carers, cuts to child benefit, cuts to the debt grant. Now, these are all choices that this government have made and that the Taoiseach has stood over. Many of them coming from her own department, like cuts to back to school clothing allowances. And before I came in, I spoke to an individual, and he said I could read his email. I'm not going to obviously name him, but this is just an example. He's an individual living in Cork. They were private renting. He's a partner and two kids, both under the age of 4, and unfortunately they've been living in a hotel for the last 4 months. Their landlord came along following the announcement of the impending legislation and put up their rents. They sought help from the department, from the local welfare officer, as they were advised. They went to threshold, and unfortunately they could not continue to rent in that property. They were 5 years on a local authority housing list, and they ended up becoming homeless. A young father, his partner, and 2 young kids, both under the ages of 4. It got to a stage where they were so much in desperation, living in a room inside a hotel, that on the 28th of December, just gone, he tried to take his own life. Now, thankfully, he was found in time by his father-in-law, who ended up having to kick in the bathroom door. The paramedics were called because he was unconscious, and they said that he was probably 2 to 3 minutes away from death. Now, thankfully, he has come out of that situation with a real determination to get his life back on track. But he is not getting any help, Minister. He has been to the local authorities, he has been to the welfare officers. He cannot get a rented property in Cork City under the guidelines that are there at the moment and the limits that are put in place. That is the reality. And until this government recognises that housing is a huge issue then you are going to have cases where people are going to continue to live in hotels, and unfortunately, in some cases, they see no way out, they see no light at the end of the tunnel, and unfortunately, people are losing their lives. And that is, sadly, a legacy of this government. We can all, and you can all, talk about the merits and the improvements, but you also have to recognise that you got things wrong. You got things wrong. And I've no issue with somebody putting their hand up and saying, I've got it wrong, and I'll finish on this, Cathaoirleach. In fairness to Minister Quinn, when he was the Minister for Education, and he tried to cut the debt, he put his hand up and said, look, I got it wrong. I'm going to reverse it. But there's been too many Labour ministers with such an arrogance, particularly the Minister for the Environment, who, there's no love lost between me and him, who unfortunately will not put his hand up and say, look, I've got this wrong, we're going to reverse the way we're going, and we're going to actually try and give some solutions, credible solutions, to the individual that I just spoke about.
Deputy, could I